Okay, Nick and Andy, we're now going to preview a big game coming up in the Premier League. Arsenal against Newcastle United in North London. Nick, I'm going to come to you first. Obviously, a big game for the Gunners, looking to reduce Liverpool's gap to just 2 points at the top of the table. What are your general thoughts on this one? Because we have an Arsenal team in the Premier League surging in the right direction, and Newcastle, injuries, defensive mistakes, just kind of stumbling along. So, in theory, there should be only one team that is winning this, and it might not be your beloved Newcastle.
That's correct, in theory. But guess what? I'm not dealing with theories this week, Joseph. No, honestly, I have been floored over the last 24 hours, but what I saw Arsenal do at Porto yesterday. And it's not because they lost. It's not because it was 0-0. It's because this team that was, for a while, it's this team that was flying, was crushing teams, just looked like they shrunk from the moment. And when you combine that with the very real fact that, or not fact, perception that when teams go into slumps, it's not just one game. I kind of feel like this has the chance to be one of those weird, sloppy 3-2s in any direction. Newcastle does not defend well right now. They've struggled in that way. But Arsenal, I have to imagine if there's a chance for that team with that mentality to be shook, it's now. Because Mikel Arteta, after that game, Mr. We're awesome all the time, and I think that's been a credit to him, basically said, I can't believe what we did out there. And the quote that stood out to me, I was literally going to be done with my shift, but the quote was good enough that I'm like, we have to have a post-up on this, was, if you're not going to win the game, you can't lose it. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I think Arsenal could well bounce back here. But I also think, given the midweek and the travel, could we be seeing a 2 or 3 game dip for them, which we've seen before?
Yeah, I mean, Andy, it's a great point, right? I mean, there was a disappointing defeat in Porto in midweek. It was just a lack of energy and cutting edge, which is so anti-Arsenal that we've seen over the last month or two, with how many goals they're scoring, how they're playing with confidence. And it's almost like an acceptance, like, we're too good for this. We'll win somehow. We'll figure it out, or second leg will be fine. And they didn't manage the situation. I think that's maybe the point Nick was making, it almost a maturity issue for this team. A lot of those players haven't been in the Champions League knockout rounds before. And now it's how do they recover from that, and how do they get out of a bit of a hole in that competition. But if we look at the Newcastle game here, there's an opportunity right away to put some of those wrongs right. But Arteta's comments were pretty scathing in terms of, he said it's not good enough, need to manage it better. Declan Rice said the same thing. And it was almost a little bit of a reminder of what happened at the end of last season for me. And maybe it's good that it happened a bit early on for Arsenal. And I still think they're going to go through in the last 16 against Porto, seeing what we did. But just making life a little bit harder for themselves than they probably need to be.
Yeah, they've done it the last 2 seasons. The season before for a top 4 place, and let it slip in the final 3-4 games of the season. So I have 2 points on this. And that's kind of, one is a young team in a new situation, learning the new stage, even against a team, all due respect, of Porto's caliber at this point in time. It's a different, what is the phrase that you guys use over there, Joe? A different kettle of fish?
Different kettle of fish, just about to
yes,
say that.
Thank you. I had to work that one in. And so they are going to, obviously they're going to learn from this. They probably go through and reach the quarterfinals after this disappointing first leg. But I buy a lot of what Nick just said there. I can see this kind of, not morphing into a slump, but snowballing just a little bit for them, because I'm looking at their squad here. It's not an incredibly deep squad. In the Premier League this season, they only have 13 players who have played more than 650 minutes. And they've got 3, 4, 5 players at the top that are well over 2,000 already at this point. And so they have concentrated those minutes among 13, 14, maybe at most 15 players over the entirety of the season so far. And it's been a pretty compact schedule to this point. It's going to continue to be that way as they progress in the Champions League. And so that's going to be, I mean, we spend all this time talking about the players. They're young, they're inexperienced, they don't know the situation. Mikel Arteta has, for all intents and purposes, no idea what he's doing at this point, because he has not been there either. No idea is a little bit strong, but he is inexperienced in the situation as well, and rotating the team, between Premier League and Champions League, Premier League, Champions League, and just how to navigate that situation. There's a reason that City and Chelsea and United previously, and even Liverpool now, have such big and deep squads of players. You say, well, there's no way that guy's going to get the minutes that he needs this season. Over the course of the year, they will. Those opportunities will arise, and they'll get their opportunities. And it's just, it's not the way that this Arsenal squad was built in the summer. And I wonder if come the end of the season, they'll regret that just a bit.
Yeah, you know what? That is the big difference between them and Liverpool, Man City, right? I mean, the squad depth, if down the stretch, Saka, Odegaard, Rice, one of those guys was to go down, there's a huge drop-off there. But not just that, you mentioned it there. There's probably a reason why they've had these dips in forms late in the season, the last couple of seasons. These guys are shattered. Saka, Odegaard, they're playing pretty much all the time. They're picking up knocks. Saka in particular has been a target for fullbacks for a long, long time. And Man City can handle it better. They can rotate better. Liverpool, we're finding out that their young players are much better than maybe even Klopp thought, and has surprised them a lot in recent weeks. And I think in this title race now, it is going to be about managing the situation a little bit. But they've had some big injuries as well, Arsenal. When you look at Timber came in to try and help them defensively in the midfield, plug a lot of those gaps as a versatile player. He's been out essentially the whole season. Tomiyasu, very similar there. And I just think now is a really interesting time for Arsenal. They've been great in recent weeks, but now is when you want to see a reaction in this game against Newcastle. Nick, Newcastle, let's talk about your team. So they've gone a little bit, right? But it's the injuries have played a big part in that, built up heavily. Defensive mistakes, though, have been conceded 8 goals in their last 3 games, just sloppy errors again, down to a lot of big absentees back there. But do you think, say they get a big win this weekend and the remaining schedule they have, can they sneak into Europe in 7th place, Conference League? I mean, that would be a great achievement given everything I've just listed there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, 1,000,000,000,000%. And the schedule is there, in case you think I'm being, a homer here, which is funny because I live in Buffalo, New York, not Newcastle. They go to, right. They still go to Arsenal. They still go to Chelsea. They still go to Man United. I know theirs are tough, but they've already got both their games with Man United out of the way. They got both their games with Liverpool out of the way. I think those are the 2 most difficult matchups for them, if I'm honest, because of the way that Eddie Howe likes to play. It's strange. If you were to tell me they're going to Fulham this weekend or Everton are coming, I would say, I don't know if they're going to be up for it. They're always up for these big games. I think Eddie Howe has pushed those buttons correctly. And it's one of the reasons at the beginning of this segment, I kind of said, you know what? You get this feeling they're going to show up. And you don't know if they're going to lose 3-2 or win 3-2. But the difference is when somebody comes off the bench for Newcastle, as good or as bad as they are, you know what you're going to get. Arsenal, let's say they bring off Eddie Nketiah or Reece Nelson. You feel like you're either going to get a hat trick or one of the most anonymous performances you've ever seen. And so the way Newcastle's built its depth, I have to give them a lot of credit, whether I need to credit Dan Ashworth on his way out the door or not. I really think Eddie Howe's mentality might not be enough to win the league. And he's too loyal to his guys to really, like Dan Burns shouldn't have been playing for a month. He should be resetting himself, but Eddie Howe is too loyal. That said, they're up for every game. You don't see them not show up unless they're missing 25 dudes.
Yeah. And they are missing a lot of players.
They have been this year, yeah.
Yeah, Gordon, Harvey Barnes, Almiron lined up last time against Bournemouth. I mean, that's pretty much all they have in attack right now. I mean, they have some players coming back, but that's still a dangerous attack. And then I think, Andy, I want to focus on the key battle for me is probably Bruno Guimaraes against Declan Rice in midfield. I mean, that's going to be quite the battle. I think both those guys, they can put their foot in when they need to, but have real quality on it as well. And Bruno's been sort of the spirit animal of this Newcastle team for a long, long time now. Prediction-wise, I'm going to go for what Nick said. I'm going to go for a 3-2 win to Arsenal. I think Newcastle are going to cause a lot of problems. But what's your prediction and what's your kind of key battle that you're going to focus on?
I do like, Bruno versus the world. I think is kind of the mentality that he's taken on recently, and he's had to. I think to your point, Joe, it's to me, it's really as simple as, does Alexander Isak play? Is he available for this one? And because he's the one to me, and just aside from not having numbers up top, fits the way that this game is going to go from Newcastle's perspective perfectly. If you can put Almiron and Gordon wide of Isak, then you can really set up and defend deep. I think that gives Arsenal trouble. But then when you win the ball, you have 3 top tier or pretty top tier Premier League attackers that you can then get out into space, and that's where all 3 of those players thrive. And I think you take Arsenal's Champions League participation into account, you take the number of games that they've played this season, the games that they have coming up, and I can see a path to Newcastle getting maybe not just something, but all 3 out of this game. I think in the end, though, it's going to be 2-2. And it's going to feel more like a loss for Newcastle because of the opportunity that I think is there for them to take it.
Nick, what's your prediction, mate?
It's not at St. James's Park, so I would take a 2-2 in this scenario. But I think about the legs, and one of the things that I failed to say when I was watching that Arsenal game, I was ready to criticize Mikel Arteta for not making changes, and then I looked at their bench. The options, he put Jorginho in, and you're like, well, that's a defensive move. Well, he didn't. I mean, he had Reece Nelson and Nketiah. That's
a first.
It shows something. Right. It shows how he thinks about them, but they didn't necessarily have those options. I think that depth could challenge them here. I will tell you this. 2 things from that game very quickly that influenced my prediction. Declan Rice was incredible. He barely has bad games. He's always in it. Martin Odegaard was not. And he, to me, is the key to the season, because there's a chance that in 4 years we're talking about him as a Kevin De Bruyne. There's also a chance that we're talking about him as this level of player forever. So this is the chance for a player of his renown, who we've talked about since he was 16, to grab it by the scruff of the neck. So I'll go 2-1 Arsenal.
All right, there you go. Prediction are in for Arsenal against Newcastle. It's going to be a good one. We're expecting plenty of goals in North London. So head over to Pro Soccer Talk on NBCSports.com for all the latest information on this big game in the Premier League. Let's see if Newcastle can cause a bit of an upset away at Arsenal.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host for NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch more videos all season long. And for even more Premier League content, from original series to live matches, head over to Peacock. And be sure to tune in for Premier League mornings every weekend on USA Network and on Peacock. We will see you there.